Now, let's get back to our federal budget coverage now. Let's bring in former Victorian Liberal Party President Michael Kroger and Labor MP Josh Burns. Thank you both very much for your time this evening. Michael Kroger, first to you. What's your takeout, what's your analysis of the budget handed down by Treasurer Jim Chalmers last night?
Well, he's spending like a drunken sailor. So you know, expenditure to GDP next year gets to 26.6%, the highest in 40 years, putting aside the pandemic. He's got $120 billion worth of deficits coming in the next 4 years, which is why I don't think there'll be another budget before the election. That's before you add the $80 billion off balance sheet that he's spending, which is on capital account, not on the income and expenditure account. Spending is out of control under this government. He can't control his spending. He should be thanking the mining industry for keeping his budget afloat. But this guy's out of his depth. He's out of money. And if you want to know why it's so irresponsible, you just look at the $300, right? These things, of course, they should be means tested, right? People who are well off do not need the $300, but it was all too hard, so he just thought he'd give the money. This is typical Labor. It's all too, just give it to everybody, right? Australia is going backwards under Chalmers. He's not good enough to be Treasurer. He's a B grader, and he's plundering, you know, the revenues to fulfil his insatiable desire to spend money. And, you know, sooner or later, the Prime Minister's got to bring him to heel because, you know, he's damaging the Australian economy. And the final point is this. This is an inflationary budget. If you want to know why, inflation's 3.5%, right? It was 3% in 2007, 3%. The Governor of the Reserve Bank in 2007 said, I'm worried that inflation's getting more than 3%. I've got to increase interest rates, which he did before the election. You know, interest rates then were 6.5%. 6.5%. He increased it to 6.75% just before the election. The gap was 3.5% between the cash rate and and inflation. And so what you've got in Australia now is a situation where the cash rate probably needs to be higher, even though I don't think there'll be 3 rate rises. It needs to be higher to get inflation under control, and Chalmers has done nothing except put oil on the fire.
All right, Josh Burns, let's get your response to that. The main things that Michael Kroger just accused your government of: spending out of control, the $300 energy payment should be means tested, and that the budget is inflationary. Josh Burns.
Well, good evening, Sharri, and good evening, Michael. I mean, full credit to Michael for getting out the talking points. He did it with gusto, but he missed a couple of key facts, one of which is that this is now the second budget in a row where we've delivered a surplus, something that the coalition didn't do despite winning 3 terms of government. They didn't do it under Tony Abbott, they didn't do it under Malcolm Turnbull, and they didn't do it under the previous bloke, Scott Morrison. Jim Chalmers has done it twice. He's proven that he is managing the budget in a fiscally responsible way, while also ensuring that across the country, people who are facing the pressures of cost of living get some support, and whether that's done through the redesigned tax cuts, whether it's done through reforming the HEC system, or, you know, I mean, honestly, Sharri, if Michael wants to lead the Liberal Party's charge of talking down lower power prices and a reduction in power prices for Australian families and hardworking Australians, then be my guest. You should never interrupt your opponents when they're making mistakes.
Josh, you told us to give us $275 every year.
By all means, you should lead the.
You said $275 every year.
Sure.
And by the way, Josh, Josh, you know full well our mutual friend Josh Frydenberg delivered a budget surplus in 2018-19, but in those days it wasn't considered a surplus because the $8 billion from the Future Fund wasn't included in the budget. It is now. But if it had been included then, he would have delivered on the same rules a $7 billion surplus. So this is all fluff from Jim Chalmers. And the chickens are coming home to roost in the next 4 years. He's leaving us with $120 billion of deficits.
OK, we've got a couple of other issues to get to. Labor politician Fatima Payman has broken ranks to accuse Israel of genocide, directly addressing Anthony Albanese. She told the SBS, and I'm quoting here, "My conscience has been uneasy for far too long, and I must call this out for what it is. This is a genocide, and we need to stop pretending otherwise." She also said, "From the river to the sea, Palestine will be free." Josh Burns, what do you make of these comments from one of your own colleagues?
Well, Sharri, I mean, this has been a really hard 7 months, and I personally am finding it really difficult. And one of the things that I think is really important is that we need to be able to agree and disagree respectfully. Clearly, I disagree. This is a situation where the Prime Minister has outlined our position on the river to the sea chant, and I support the Prime Minister's stance on this. And you know, it's a hard thing, and I'm not going to be running sort of commentary on Fatima. I like Fatima a lot. She's a friend, and I can see she's hurting. But you know,
But she's just repeated a hate
clear.
chant there, a hate chant that even the Prime Minister said has no place on our streets.
Yeah, and I support the Prime Minister's position on this wholeheartedly. I think that we need to engage respectfully in these debates, and we support a two-state solution. It's really important that we work towards a two-state solution, and that be for a safe and secure Israel and also for one day a viable Palestinian state, and that's why we don't support it.
Yeah. Just very quickly before I go to Michael Kroger on this topic, on the weekend, Albanese and Penny Wong supported the vote at the UN to give Palestine a seat at the table. Do you agree with that position? And if you disagree, did you make that clear to them?
I did, and I outlined my position prior to the vote and also outlined my position following the vote. I issued a statement which is publicly available for everyone to see, where I outlined some key principles, one of which is that there are still hostages in the ground. Somewhere in Gaza, there's still over 130 hostages who are unaccounted for, who were taken by a terrorist organisation. And I also outlined the fact that in her recent speech, the Foreign Minister outlined some really important principles, one of which is being that Hamas can play no future role in the governance of Gaza, the other ones being that the Palestinian Authority needs to be reformed, and then that reformed Palestinian Authority cannot be a threat to the people of Israel. And in my view, Sharri, I don't believe those conditions have been met yet. So I issued that statement and said that an abstention would have been more appropriate because it would have meant that we're open to future positions, but we're not there yet.
Sorry, Michael, just one last one for Josh. Josh, look, there is a strong sense that federal Labor has completely abandoned the Jewish community and Israel. Are you alone here in speaking publicly, or do you have colleagues who are equally disappointed, like you are, in the positions that Penny Wong and Albanese have taken?
Look, Sharri, Australia remains a strong friend of Israel, and I'm a custodian of that relationship as well as my colleagues, and we've maintained that Israel has a right to defend itself, and that following the atrocious attacks on October 7, that Israel, like any other country, has the right to defend its people.
But do any of your colleagues agree?
I would also, and I would also say that I have been really heartened by colleagues who have reached out. I mean, I'm not going to break their trust, and obviously I'm the only one who has spoken out, but publicly, and if others wish to do so, that's a matter for them. But certainly, colleagues have come to me and expressed their support, and I really appreciate that.
Yeah. Look, it must be very tough having that isolated position. Michael Kroger, what do you think of what we're seeing tonight at the University of Melbourne, where students, pro-Palestinian protesters, have taken over a building?
Well, first of all, can I say to Josh, well done to you on the extremely principled stand you've taken in difficult times. I know it's difficult for you. Everyone knows that. Everyone knows.
Agreed.
But and it won't do much good within your party getting praise from me, mate. But standing on principle, there's nothing finer in politics than people of courage, and you've showed courage, and I congratulate you, and I'm sure I speak for many, many Australians.
Well said, Michael.
Secondly, Sharri, let me just say this, Sharri. These are not pro-Palestinian demonstrations. These are demonstrations of Jewish hatred, right? All this nonsense about, we're opposed to the Israeli government, we're opposed to going to Rafah, we're all about the Palestinians. What a lot of hogwash. Why don't they just come out and be honest and say we hate Jews, right? Why don't the far-left racists come out and be honest and say, look, we just hate Jews. That's why. Well, that's why we're demonstrating. Go back to 1970 when I was only, 13. I never remember reading in the papers any demonstrations when King Hussein of Jordan, he expelled Arafat and all the Palestinians from Jordan because they were causing too much military strife. He expelled the Palestinians. Were there demonstrations then? No. Were there demonstrations 20, 30 years ago when Iran and Iraq killed $1 to $2 million of each, $1 to $2 million of each other's citizens? No. 2,000 people killed in Yemen when Arabs were killing Arabs? No. When ISIS, when Al-Qaeda was slaughtering other Muslims, were there demonstrations? No. When Assad was gassing people in Syria, were there demonstrations? No. What is unique about this issue? What is unique about this issue that everyone's getting very upset, all these young students are getting upset about? What is unique? That there are Jews involved. Be honest, Sharri. They should just come out and say, we are racists, we hate Jewish people, and you know, be honest. Because they're losing support all over the world, these people. Amongst the middle classes. I mean, the people are just observing this Jewish hatred. You know, people are thinking this is all nonsense. Palestinians, they could have stood up for the Palestinians on any number of occasions. These students and their forebears over the last 40, 50 years, as I've demonstrated, we never heard a word from them, right? Arab against Arab, Muslim against Muslim, nothing. But when the Jews are involved, oh, well, you know, 100%. We have to demonstrate. Come on, be honest. Be honest, these people at Melbourne Uni, put up your signs that we hate Jews. Be honest with everybody for a change.
Completely right. Michael Kroger, Josh Burns, we're out of time. Josh, I echo Michael Kroger's comments about your courage. Thank you for coming on the show and for standing up for the community despite your government.